I can understand how someone can be homeless in a place like this.
I don't blame that woman. I blame the politicians.
Sometimes it's not a choice. You know, I do work, I do have a job.
I didn't go to no shelter yet because I don't have no ID. For two, it's hard to try to talk to people and they don't even know who you are.
Between 30 and 60 people walk into my office a day. And of that, 90% walk in either for applying for an apartment or in the process of being evicted from their current apartments, or because they need some social services, food stamps, public assistance in order to stay in their homes and be able to eat. We have to make sure that these apartments that are being built in our community have deep affordability.
Most of the people, when they talk affordable housing, you need to make $45,000 as a minimum. Well, what is $45,000? You know, most of my people, sometimes they're only making $20,000, and I have to be careful to use that number because they may be less. Can they pay $1,500 in this community now? $2,000? This is what we are facing right now.
We are not building enough affordable housing for those families that are at the lowest economic spectrum. The families making less than $30,000 a year, which is essentially minimum wage.
And this is wrong.
It is a total and utter disgrace.
The supply of affordable housing is something that the mayor had promised that he would deliver a certain number of affordable housing units. He has not come anywhere close to that number, and he's just trying to come off as this progressive voice of the city of New York, but have literally left thousands of people behind in his term.
What you'll see is landlords raising the rents to astronomical numbers. We have a housing crisis, a housing shortage. They make good money off of renting out their apartments to wealthy people.
We come back to the same point about the real estate industry. They're interested in a return for investment.
I'm beginning to not to talk anymore about affordable housing. That word for me, affordable housing, is not something other than it's not going to be affordable. That's the way I look at it.
The rezonings that allowed more developers to move into neighborhoods that had not been attractive accelerated the gentrification and the displacement, adding to more homelessness. The city has this mandatory inclusionary housing so that they get some affordable housing, but the affordable housing is not affordable to the people who live in that area. Developers go to the City Planning Commission and ask for changes in zoning. So much of the city and state's support for luxury housing that's going begging right now. They can't unload these multi-million-dollar properties, and yet they have gotten special waivers for building higher than the allowed height.
What affordable housing mean? What is affordability? People get confused. Oh, affordable housing, that we can build that. No, but can we build low-income housing? It's a big difference.
The apartments that are being built, they don't allow people to be able to rent those apartments. They're now catering to a new community that they wish to attract into their luxury towers. That is not a solution.
How long have you been homeless?
It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been taking a long time, and I'll tell you why. The rents have been too sky high. I was waiting for Section 8 in New York and in Jersey. Nothing was showing up.
If the mayor has managed to condemn some areas to build schools, we should be condemning some areas to build affordable housing. And the mayor has the power to do so. The mayor, and for all the mayors before him, to give so much territory to developers to build these unaffordable apartments that our people cannot pay for it. And I have direct my folks to look into these areas to build real affordable housing. Do not wait for the federal government to do so. They're not going to do it.
Although we're doing a lot of great things around building affordable housing, we're not making a significant dent in the system.
The number one driver right now is just rising rents and stagnant wages.
They increased the rent so much. You had to choose, am I going to eat or am I going to have a place to live? I'm waiting for an apartment.
How long have you been waiting?
I've been waiting I've been here for 2 years. Some women have been here, they said they've been in the shelter system for 5 years.
I've been to numerous different sites in the shelter system. This is like at least my 8th site. Each time they tell you it's your permanent shelter, but it never really is. I mean, this is a part of my life that I never in a million years could you have told me I would end up in a shelter. Never heard of them growing up, didn't know nothing about them. They just didn't exist.
People cannot afford to stay in their homes.
The economy dropped during that time, so I lost my job. You have to leave like by the 10th and the marshal will come and they'll put your things out on the street. So I didn't have any place to go because I was a single mom. And my financial situation exhausted itself. So I found myself going to a shelter so I'm not sleeping outside. So that's how I ended up here.
The first step always has to be stabilize them in their homes. And once we do that and we stop the growth of the crisis, then we can move on to all the myriad causes of homelessness.
Most of the communities where you see the greatest threat of displacement, of rising rents, are communities of color, immigrant communities where you have a lot of residents that are living on a fixed income. They're at or below the federal poverty level. If you push them out, they have nowhere to go. How can we attack homelessness? How can we look at our city's housing agency in terms of the new construction, opportunities for women and children to be housed in permanent housing?
Do a better measurement between the income that is coming in versus the cost of living that is taking place right now in our city, in our state.
You cannot deny a tenant an apartment, and that's what's been happening.
They make it difficult if you don't have this voucher that they're discussing, which will allow them to pay whoever is renting the apartment.
Even having a voucher doesn't guarantee you anything. And they are in short supply and don't cover nearly enough as rents have escalated dramatically.
People will come in with a voucher and we can't find a landlord in the community that will take them. You can't use a voucher for an apartment that's more than $1,100 and they will pay from that $900, let's just say. You can't find an $1,100 apartment. And of, I would say, 100 people that walk in, maybe one lucky person will actually wind up in an apartment. But these applications are lotteries.
The vouchers, in any context, don't really work.
We have to look at making sure that people can access the vouchers and use them.
And where somebody is a terrible landlord and doesn't provide services to people.
Harassing you, being denied basic necessities like heat, hot water, having no gas, living in an apartment building that's not conducive to your living, the elevator's out, I can't walk up the steps, I have a disability.
Instead of fines that never get paid, maybe you take them to court and you seize their property.
Some of the processes that the landlords were using to get people out were just cruel. People were being evicted for being accused of things that which was leading to evictions that weren't true. And so we were seeing that people were being taken to court. We were seeing places where landlords were sending eviction notices to the entire buildings, just fishing to find one or two people that they could actually get out.
I was in there because I became homeless because I was evicted. It's been a horrible situation for me, very depressing. My mother is alleged to be dead, but I don't know if she's dead or not. It's a long story, a very ugly long story. I was not supposed to be evicted. When the eviction came in, my mother's daughter had her name on it, my sister. They caused problems for me. And I just got put in the street. I should never been put in the street. I was illegally evicted also.
Did you go to court?
I did go to court.
What happened?
That's the thing.
There?
I was going to housing court. I was doing the housing court. When you go to housing court, you can't get evicted that quickly. There's a process. You're supposed to have, I had adult protective services. I had a guardian. I was going to court. I was doing everything that the court asked me to do. All of a sudden, I'm evicted. They told me it would take a process. What they have to do is first they have to try to get welfare to pay that back rent. And I'm also legally disabled, so they can't just put you in the street like that, but I just got put in the street.
if the cases are very extreme, the city will litigate these cases and take landlords and owners to court. But then you languish in housing court. The families are not able to move in until that court case is settled, and that could take a while. But the majority of the cases we do see are working women that do have an income, that have fallen on hard times, that are in a situation where they're doubled up. They are living with someone and that condition is no longer viable.
I came on a bus. I took what money I had and got as far as I could, and trying to get enough money to get a bus ticket to get to my next job. Right around Detroit, Michigan, yeah.
What kind of job?
It's a carnival job. I work in a carnival.
And where do you go at night?
To Brooklyn.
You staying in a shelter there or on the streets?
Nah, we have a friend that we stay with.
Oh.
Well, I'm still with my husband, unfortunately.
There are people who are living doubled up, tripled up in apartments. I know a family that has 9 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Because if anybody finds out that there's 9 people living in an apartment, maybe the whole apartment will even get evicted. And those people are on the brink of homelessness.
How do you change it? How do you get somebody who is a mayor who is not beholden to real estate interests?
If there's somebody, a family or an individual who's on the brink of falling into homelessness, we can stop that and give them the stability they need.
When you're just at that cusp, you can make rent. When you need a little bit of help, if you want to give that supplemental income or support so they can stay where they are and taking care of them before they lose their apartments or homes.
A majority of the people who live in homeless shelters do have jobs.
It's a misconception about homeless women or homeless people in general. Is like just because we don't have a permanent space where we live, it doesn't deter us, or at least for me, it doesn't personally deter me from being able to do what I want to do. I do a lot of gigs. I'm also working a film today for my friend off of 54th Street. I do like lights and sound, and that's why I love New York, because there's so many different things that I can pull from. I did Fashion Week a few weeks ago.
Sometimes it's not a choice. You know, I do work. I do have a job. It's just getting from point A to point B. You know, to be able to make that money, to be able to have a livelihood.
People forget that they're working. They have a job to go to every single day. They just go home to a shelter every night. Why is their circumstance any different from someone else that works hard every day? City workers, school crossing guards, and safety agents. I know someone that works as a janitor at the NYPD that lives in a shelter every day, and she's a single woman with no children.
We have a long history of devaluating women and women's work and women's worth in our economy. For so many years, because we created an economy where wages have been stagnant for almost 25 years, there isn't enough money that's being circulated in our local neighborhoods, where we think that borrowing money in forms of interest-bearing loans or credit is real money, and it's not. And so we need to figure out how to get our wages up and how to get our money back into circulation better for the people that are struggling on the ground.
Their jobs are you make below minimum wage, and you can't sustain for your family. And also, I'll tell you something else. The system is set up to keep them poor, to keep them in homeless shelters so a bunch of people can make money, and they are caught in a set of circumstances that is not their fault.
For the women that are not working, I think about opportunities that really has not been invested upon. Vocational and literacy skills and job training programs, entrepreneurial opportunities, changing the faces of a lot of trades and industries that were never led by women. We try to get young women into plumbing, electrician, laborers, different construction skills where they can get into apprenticeship programs, and they can get these skill sets that really are employable.
I have a mental disorder, schizoaffective. I get anxiety, so it's hard to be in crowds and stuff like that. I worked last year. I got sick, like I had a breakdown and I had to go into the hospital. The hospital that I go to Bellevue, they help. So like when I'm on the job, I get a little panic attack and and then I just start getting sick. So I don't have a job anymore. Yeah, but I do well working one-on-one. It's when I'm in crowds, like I get anxious and then I have a panic attack and I want to work. I want to work. I can't live off $800 a month.
Many people are dealing not just with mental health concerns, but they may have physical issues.
A lot of people don't do anything. What do you do? I mean, I worked 20 years. I'm not going back to work. It's too late for me. My legs are screwed up. 90% of that population walks with walkers. These are very sick women. 90% of them are not going back to work. Some of them are as old as 72 years old. I need like a knee replacement.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you have a doctor?
I have a pain management doctor. I just recently finished getting the gel shots in my knee, but it ain't doing nothing.
If people have been homeless, they may have developed some mental health concerns as a result of being constantly afraid, constantly under stress.
I'm in a room with 3 other people, and I have one that smells, and I have one that she talks out loud to herself, and she gets very aggressive. So, and then she spits and stuff like that.
Mentally sick?
Yeah, she's, yes. So it's pretty hard because you're dealing with all kinds of personality and smells, and the food is not good, and sometimes it's not so clean. They do clean it, but in seconds it just gets into a mess. So it's not the best.
The other category that's very high in our shelter system in terms of population is DV, families that are in a domestic violence situation.
I was in a shelter, he worked at the shelter, and he hit on me, and I was 21, I was vulnerable, and he seduced me, and I went to live with him. His father lived there, it was his place, and then his uncle lived there. The father had the room, and then we slept on we slept on an air mattress under the dining room table. And so then I started cleaning houses, and then he ended up finding a nurse or whatever. She had her own place, and he went with her. And when they fought, he would come back, beat me up, and take my money from cleaning houses. His father and uncle were too scared to get involved.
But she's got a DV case, even though that partner, that spouse, may not live with her, but her safety is being compromised and is on the line, and she can no longer live there. So she's got to leave. And that happens a lot with women who are victims of domestic violence, where, you know, they're forced to leave their homes. So when you put all of those different categories together and you put that in one system, you have what we see today. 63,000 individuals living in shelters, almost 30% are children under 18. It doesn't mean that they're not incapable of doing this work. It just means they need support. Women that have mental health issues, it doesn't mean they're incapable of working. They just need support.
In some things, I really felt they could have did differently. Some of them women, like I said, had major attitudes, but a lot of them had mental problems. You are supposed to be able to deal with that kind of person. You're supposed to have that education and that training. A lot of the workers didn't show their professional side.
Being homeless and having a mental condition does not mean that you're not human. You are human. and you are capable of doing everyday living activities, and you can work. As long as the situation is right, you can have a job and have a normal life. And that's all that I
New York City is a right to shelter city. We know that. And because the homeless shelter system exists here and will take them in, we see that it creates for these families a huge conflict.
Who populates our homeless shelters? They are women and children, families, mothers, single parent households raising children. That's the face of homelessness.
When you are sent to a PATH office, which is where you go for your referral and interview intake into the homeless shelter, they put you in a temporary housing. They give you temporary placement at a shelter. That's a temporary period while they investigate.
First they had us under a place, I guess that was like the intake center on William Street. Yeah, I went through like, I guess, a check-in service. So they make you have like a psyche evaluation, I guess, to see how severe your homelessness was, so they can offer you counseling, which I believe is a good issue, so that you can get used to living indoors and being able to bathe and being able to eat 3 times a day and getting used to that, because I believe that's the shock. So you're kind of grouped in the beginning, and then you kind of have to explain yourself over and over again, so it gets kind of, but it's just when you're just not used to that, it's a little frustrating to be grouped in.
You are assessed in terms of your eligibility.
How that happen? Why you here? What are your needs are? What are the needs are? Right? And what is your mental, physical capability? And then let's take it from there.
They have inspectors that go out, visit the homes that you have provided as your previous residents, and they double check and make sure that you really are homeless and in need of housing.
If there's any other accommodations that a family member can do or anything else where the person can be housed.
Let's say you're denied under your first assessment. The city says, no, you provided us this address with your mom and you can live with your mom. But no, my mom doesn't want me there, but you can live there. They'll deny you. So then you have to go back through the process again and again and again until you get approved. And once you pass that process, you are housed in what we call a tier 2, which is a full-fledged shelter. You have a domestic incident, you could be in a domestic violence shelter. You're classified as DV. So whatever your classification is, you are assigned right to one of those tiers throughout the city. And you're in a building with other families, depending on your unit size. You're in a 1, 2, and or 3 bedroom. You could be in a studio if you have a small child. The situations that families and women and mothers go through every day is nothing to be envious of. They deal with it because they have to. They survive because that's their only option, right? And when your only option is to survive for yourself and your children, you do what you have to do to make sure that you get to work every day, your kids get to school, and it's not pretty, but you survive and you make it work. That doesn't mean that you like the conditions. It means that you've accepted that this is your circumstance for now, but it's not permanent. And that's our job, to make your situation temporary to get you in long-term housing.
The city is swamped with the amount of people that are coming in, and they're doing their best. Problem is the state has walked away and is not a partner and is not helping them.
Everybody playing the game with our homeless population, and because it's not a popular issue for people to get elected, they all promise, but there's no result.
Right now, the numbers are as bad as they were 80 years ago with the Great Depression.
So when you look at an issue like homelessness, that really faces a lot of families in New York City. We have a crisis in our city. And we believe that although we're doing a lot of great things around building affordable housing, we're not making a significant dent in the system. They're in this community. Many of them were displaced. They were priced out. They fell on hard times. Many of them could be victims of domestic violence in a really bad situation in terms of their public safety for themselves and children. Honestly speaking, What are women facing in the homelessness system? Women face unique challenges. I think about intergenerational poverty, where you have a grandma that was on the system, and then mom is on the system, and then that translates to daughter on the system.
There are currently 150,000 school-age children who are homeless in New York. Some of them are on the streets, and some are doubled up on other people's couches, but they are homeless, which is not only bad for them, but their prospects of becoming productive members of society is diminished, because it's harder to study, it's harder to stay on track, and what we find is generationally those kids are much more likely to wind up on public assistance or involved in the criminal justice system.
And we say, well, some of these children aren't doing well in school. You know, what a surprise.
Why can't we break down that silo and stop that intergenerational cycle of poverty in its tracks, so they're understanding that this is a temporary situation? This is not a lifestyle.
Tens of thousands of people, many of them women, who are working hard to support their families, but the only place they can afford to live is a shelter.
It's expensive to house people. It's expensive to put them up for shelters. It's expensive to have to provide transportation and other mechanisms for them to go about their daily lives.
We spend a lot of money housing people poorly.
There's other costs to homelessness, like cops responding, emergency rooms, housing courts churning out evictions. So homelessness costs taxpayers billions and billions of dollars.
We have to make sure that we stop talking about building more shelters and relocating people to hotels. If you look into my neighborhood, every hotel literally have at least a 30% occupancy of homeless families. Those people get displaced, those people sell their homes, those people sometimes cannot pay the taxes, they don't getting the services that they need. They will tell you we're doing all that stuff. In reality, it's once you're there and you are on the ground and you're asking for services, it's more what I call pushing and passing the ball to somebody else. You're saying that they're not doing enough to really take these people to the next level. How can I go to a shelter and they wake me up at 6 a.m. and you cannot be coming back here until 3 p.m.? Where are I going to go if I don't have a job? Where are I going to go if it's raining? It's very difficult for them to get jobs. To tell them it's 6 a.m., breakfast is ready, 7 o'clock, you have to go, and come back at 5 p.m. because nobody can stay in the shelter. It's unacceptable and inhumane.
It's like a little mini military state in there.
What did you say the nickname for it is?
Hell's waiting room.
We don't go to shelters because they have demented people there. There are people that are not well. Many people there have tuberculosis, we were told, and they have lice.
I'm not really a germaphobe, but there's just so many communicable diseases and so many drug addicts, and I don't want to introduce myself to being in that kind of close quarters with people like that.
Where do you go while you're here to clean up?
McDonald's restroom or wherever I can go. Yeah, just to brush my hair and brush my teeth and wash my face, and I do try to stay clean.
I completely understand somebody who's homeless saying, I'm not going there.
Each and every one of us could wake up tomorrow with no job and nowhere to go and no supports and have to depend on government, right, to put us in a safe place. And those safe places don't exist. We've heard the horror stories about people in shelters. We've heard about the violence. We've heard about women feeling unsafe in these locations. We've heard about the inability to access healthcare, menstrual hygiene. We know that these issues are unique to women who are living in these conditions.
Many of the shelters are in buildings that are old and decrepit and unsafe.
Oh my God, we checked it out. We checked out the one on 30th Street. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Thank God the elevator's not working. It's an omen. It was horrible. The neighborhood was bad. There was a big long flight of steps to go up. So Uncle Billy stood downstairs. I went up and I checked the room.
It's institutional and depressing. It doesn't always feel clean. It certainly doesn't feel private.
They have rooms sectioned off. 8 people in the room. with partitions. With partitions with no doors. And it's co-ed. In the partitions, they have no doors. Why don't they have doors? For people to have their privacy. The thing is this, in that place, they try to bring two people together they know each other or their family. Otherwise, in a partition, there could be a stranger with a stranger on a small cubicle. No way. No way.
The security services for many of the shelters are privately contracted security services for people. The security guards are actually people who I believe are one step away from being homeless themselves.
Yes, a lot of the security were in shelters. And a lot of the RAs were in shelters. And I couldn't understand how you were dealing with that on the outside and then you came to us with a major attitude. But then again, maybe it's because of their living arrangement and then have to deal with somebody in that same living arrangement.
And then you have some that'll treat you so good. And then you have some, it's like two very different ends of the spectrum. This is one of the worst that I've ever been in. They have DHS, Department of Homeless Services, police officers here. I don't know how much of a cop they really are, where they issue arms, they just don't carry them with them, I don't know. But they dress the part and they treat you like shit. Even like if you came in with some goodies or something, like a Snickers bar, tuck it.
Smuggle it in.
Yeah, just to have like a little bit of normalcy. It's like taboo there. It's like taboo. We don't want you to be normal. We want you to be miserable.
There's crime, there's drug abuse, there's abuse from those security guards. So anybody who says, I'm not going to shelter because it's unsafe, I completely understand that because I've seen the conditions myself. If I was homeless, there's a real chance I'd say, you know what, I'm not going anywhere near that. I'd rather try to make it on the streets.
Two ladies have died in there since I've been there, inside the building. That's one of my biggest fears, that I die in a damn shelter.
Your son know you're homeless?
No, I haven't talked to him. No, I'm too embarrassed.
Are you in touch with him?
I am.
So you have a lot of mothers like that. Their families don't even know they're in shelters. They don't even know about this circumstance because they're so embarrassed to ask for help.
And I shouldn't be here if you can pay $1,600 a month. I can find an apartment. Then the landlord doesn't have to worry, just pay them. So they're keeping us here a little bit longer than necessary.
There is a small select group of people who are making money off of increased numbers of people falling into homelessness.
They've been paying through public assistance for 2 years.
You don't know how much they pay?
From what I understand and what I've seen, it's between $1,200 to $1,800 a month. But if you're willing to pay, then why not pay for an apartment? Because I asked that question and they said, oh no, you have to have a voucher. And I said, something's not right. So there's a little fraud or something. They're making money.
We're spending $300 probably per night to put homeless people or people in need, like I call them, in hotels. Well, you know what? If you're going to do that and you think you do have the budget for it, just do a short-term budget and then begin to build, not homeless shelters, begin to build a mechanism where we will be able to have affordable housing for these folk.
Let me ask you a question. Now, this is, I heard a rumor, but I haven't read it. Did you read that they're saying that Mayor de Blasio was given by the government $300 million
$700 million
for the homeless?
And it hasn't
but
been
I don't know
yet.
what are they doing with it? What is it for?
So over the last 8 years, since the governor came into office, the homeless crisis continues to grow because he stops us from stopping the growth, okay? As a result, because in New York City by law we have to shelter people, the city has increased the amount of money it spends on shelters by almost $1 billion. After 4 years of trying to figure out why the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, is trying to block the one thing that will stop the growth of the crisis, we have figured out that Governor Cuomo is in the shelter business. The governor, who used to work at Housing and Urban Development, so it's a cabinet level secretary position under Bill Clinton, you'd think he'd know about homelessness, and he does know about it, but what he's done is he's created a nonprofit which provides shelter. And that nonprofit has got tens of millions of dollars in new contracts, as well as other shelter providers throughout the state. It's a business. He's in the shelter business, and he takes money from people in the shelter business. And if you're in the shelter business, business is good. So several years ago, when de Blasio first came into office, I think the numbers, and I may be off a little bit, used to be the city would spend $1.4 billion on shelters. It's a lot of money. Now we're up to 2.4 annually. And that money is going to contracts for these new providers of shelters. That's how the money is out of the taxpayer's pocket and into the pocket of people who run shelters. And the more people fall into homelessness, the more their business does well, and there's money to be made there. And that's the reason why the governor has been stopping the one thing that will stop the growth of the crisis. And New York State is now in bed with these shelter owners, led by a governor whom not many people know is in the business of homeless shelters. And that's why we're continuing to see the growth of homelessness in New York State. It's ugly, and I don't have any pleasure in reporting it, but that's the situation we're in.
Part of the problem is they'll take Venus, they'll put her in the Bronx. They'll take me, put me in Brooklyn. We're family. We want to stay together. We don't want to be miles apart. And that's what they do, and they do that very quickly. Oh, well, that's what we have. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, there's the door.
There is help out here for us. When they give us like appointments to go on, please try to go on these appointments and, just don't lay around. Get up and try to do something with yourself, and do what the counselors and stuff tell you to do. And you won't have to stay in here long. It took me a minute to realize that don't just lay here. Get up and let the counselors help. I didn't know what to do when I came here. I thought you were just supposed to lay here and they're supposed to find you housing. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You have to get with the counselors and let them, so they can know what your needs are, so they can help you move forward to an apartment, and so you can be more responsible with living, your living needs and things like that.
Just because we're homeless, don't think we're not people. Don't think we have lives. We led productive lives. You never know what could happen to you. Never. You never say never. Because I didn't see it coming. I just didn't see it coming. And when it came from around the corner, down the block, hit me in the back of the head, and it kept on moving, and I stayed right where I fell.
Like the trash of the earth, and like the people that nobody wants, Because that's how I ended up here. I don't have anybody. I just want people to know, if you see a homeless woman, just don't make assumptions. She's probably not a druggie, And even if she was, you don't know what she's been through. Just don't judge. That's my message. Don't judge.
I've worked hard my whole life, and I'm just not. This isn't a cop-out. This isn't really a choice.
Citizens of the New York City and our country believe that this is problem that's been created by individual homeless person, and they are not welcome in our community. When it's the opposite. They was part of our community. They always been part of our community. They always been part of us.
How did you get this job? I put my name on a website, and it's a Jewish website, and they called me up, and I went to meet the couple, and they said okay, they're gonna have me.
Really?
Yes. I prefer doing the cleaning because it's not one-on-one.
Right.
And I have anxiety. So I don't have to deal with people, you know, that will make me get anxious and get a panic attack. They're putting my name out there in the community. So I did another job for someone, but it was just for that one time. I just asked for the minimum wage, and they gave me more than the minimum wage.
How many would you want to do altogether?
If I get this 3 days job, I will be good. I will be set for a while. It took me like about 2 years before I finally decided that, oh, this isn't, my sitting down isn't working, and it's not gonna work for me. So it took a while, but once I got over that, then I did what? And started looking for a job. Because if you sit down, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. And you can't just live off the government, you know? You just can't. Like, you wanna have your own money, you wanna have, it gives you much pride and joy when you work for your money and you have it to spend the way you want to spend it. And it's a good feeling.
I never thought I'd see the day either.
I knew it was coming, I just didn't know when.
Yeah.
And when it did come, I just didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I thought she was lying to me. I said, you're lying. Don't believe you.
And they drove you here?
Mm-hmm.
And they brought you upstairs? And you were thrilled?
No, they gave my keys first. That's when I knew.
It's time.
I got keys. I didn't care about a lease or nothing. I have keys.
Yeah.
This means I can open the door. And I've been here since.
When did you move here?
December the 3rd.
So you've been here just a month and a half or so.
January, February. The second month I had the surgery.
Right.
Second anniversary. I didn't even realize that till just now. I have not been in a place of my own in years. So it just takes very little for me to be content. All I need is my cigarettes, my remote, I have my television, I have indoor plumbing. I'm good.